It may make more sense to start something with a trading history rather than starting from scratch. Well, the 1st September 2016, we changed Curve Workplaces from a furniture dealership into a design and build and furniture company. It was down to him to get the phone ringing and get some opportunities coming in. With my pre-construction background, from 2016 to 2019, we won some local awards, and that actually helped with getting some national exposure.
People who work in business development, they seem to hop around everywhere. Why do you think they seem to get around as such more than any other?
The perception is they have a marketable asset. They're also the lifeblood of the industry. The ones moving around, 50% of them will be because they weren't as good as they told people that they were at their interview.
That's not as good as what they say they are.
The design and build industry is matured a lot. People don't know they need us until they need us.
At the end of the day, everyone who works in design and build is essentially doing the same thing, really.
That's a bit controversial. I thought we were reinventing the wheel.
Michael Potter, or should I say Alan Partridge, as you've just told me.
Well, that's what some people refer me to. It's something that I don't mind. Had it been a comedian I didn't like, then I think I would have felt a bit differently about it. But old friends and colleagues have said I sound like Alan Partridge, but
we'll go
that's for you to judge.
We'll go with Michael for today rather than
that would be preferred. Yeah. Well, at least it's not Harry. Yeah. So that's my biggest bugbear. But
welcome to SQ Stories, name of the podcast. Thank you so much for your time as well, for coming on today. And because I know obviously you're a proper busy man, so thanks so much for coming on today. Loads of topics to cover, as we had our pre-chat before. But I always like to start at the start. So if you want to give us a bit of an insight about what you were like pre-industry and what you were up to sort of those times.
Yeah, so my career in construction started by doing a degree at Reading in building surveying. I then joined Healy & Baker in 97 and was in their project management and building consultancy team there for a while. I also ran the office in Abu Dhabi for Cushman & Wakefield for a little while. Because
so did you live out there, did you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was when I was about 25, 26.
Every 25-year-old's dream, isn't it?
Well, it was a long time ago now, so it was very early 2000s, and the place has transformed even since I was there. And but that was a fascinating time in my career. But Cushman & Wakefield, as Healy & Baker became, was a great starting point for my career, and I look back very fondly on those days. In fact, my old boss Philip Nye actually starts as a non-exec director for Curve today, on the 1st of October, so it's great to be working with him again. But then fast forward to leaving Cushman & Wakefield, I was offered a job by Area Squared, now referred to as Area, and at the Forefront Group, and I thought, well, I'll give contracting a whirl. They seem to have a bit of fun, so I joined Area Squared in their Egham office, working for Gary Chandler, and I stayed there, well, very nearly within about a month of 10 years. So it was 9 years and however many days. So that was, and I did a variety of different roles there. I started off in pre-construction, so in Egham, and but latterly I was a business development director in essence for the group, using my background within professional teams to.
So you sort of leveraged your position at Cushman & Wakefield, did you?
And others, and I think it's and so I had others will be the judge, but I think I had a relatively successful period doing that for 2 to 3 years. But I always had an aspiration of doing my own thing, and I was talking to a colleague of mine at the time, Andy Wilkinson, about doing our own thing, and then that's from where Curve was born, effectively, in 2016.
So you had an 8-year period at Cushman & Wakefield, and then Area for 10 years.
Yes.
So those 18 years, you must have learned a hell of a lot just about the industry itself.
Yes, because I've done a variety of different things at Cushman's, including corporate services. It was always around dealing with occupiers and commercial property, full stop, and the refurbishment of it. So it's always been fit out related in some shape, whether it's project managing on behalf of a client or whether it is actually working as a contractor, pricing it, selling it, or doing a BD function within a fit-out business. And so, I had a great 10 years at Area. It was great to see them grow along that way, albeit they were a very successful business when I joined. That I joined just at the point at which they opened up the London office, so it was very much part of the Egham team. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed my time there. But you always want to think about what else you can do.
Yeah. Well, especially if you've worked in the industry at that point. You'd worked in the industry for 18 years, so you would almost say like the back of your hand then. And so the natural progression is to start wanting to do your own thing and operate independently.
Yeah, and I would never say I would know everything. No, or know it too well, like the back of my hand. I think that's I don't think you ever do. I think it's accepting of that fact that. That's always people always have to remember. I think I guess background has something to do with it. My father never worked for himself, for anybody. He always had his own businesses. My mum was a qualified nurse as well, so she was, I guess. Hopefully I get some empathy from her in that regard, and then I get the guy, my father, who's not worked for anybody. So, and that hopefully is a sensible blend. I think and sort of interesting growing up. When I was talking to my dad about work, you could never see the employee's perspective. But of course, I have more chats with him now because he can see the employee's perspective. Yeah. So that's that, and that. So 2016, in terms of how Curve was formed, a good friend of mine had a business called Curve Workplaces, which is a furniture dealership. Mm-hmm. So it was a sole trader. He supplied furniture on some projects I did when I was at Cushman and Wakefield all those years ago, and we'd stayed in contact. And he approached me at the same time I was talking to Andy and said, well, I think I need to do some fit out to go along with the furniture, because the furniture world's changed in as much as all design and build companies have a furniture arm of some description.
Yeah, they do. And I've recorded with a couple of people now whereby it seems that if they have a furniture company, it seems to evolve into a fit out, or vice versa. They have a fit out and then it evolves into them bringing furniture in-house.
Yes.
Seems like a natural progression.
Yes. So so for Mark Besant as a sole trader, the route to market was harder, I would say, because there was not. And also he'd spent some time in the Middle East as well, working with an American manufacturer there. He still lived in the UK, but he was operating a lot in the Middle East. And so, he approached me, and then we got together and said, well, let's, it may make more sense to start something with a trading history rather than starting from scratch. And so that's what we did. So we changed. On the 1st September 2016, we changed Curve Workplaces from a furniture dealership into a design and build and furniture company.
Okay, and then
and we started 3 of us in a Regis office in Bracknell.
That's it. I mean, to go from like the project management through to working through to Area, then starting yourself, and you've obviously come a long old way. So from 2016 to now, I'm sure there's a hell of a journey in those 8 years. Do you want to let us know from, like as a bit of a timeline, like the growth of Curve and like how it's developed into what it is today?
Yeah, well, if I start at the beginning in terms of how we went about it. So Andy and I had obviously left Area Squared, or Area as it now is, and we were quite fortunate in as much as that we could manage a year or so without paying ourselves. And obviously Curve was less of a going concern necessarily, but so our investment into Curve was actually our time in effect,
which is more precious than money sometimes. At the end of the day, time is
well time is money, because time it's time you could be spending earning money. So my wife was on maternity leave at the time, and she worked for a charity. She was an accountant at the charity, so so we had pretty much zero going in and lots going out. But I reconciled myself with the fact, well, I could always get a job. whether that was ever possible at the time or not, it didn't really matter because it's what made sure that I could sleep at night, and plus also I enjoyed doing what I was doing. So so we started, and we had a meeting with the accountants, and they just said, well, can you give us an idea of what you turn over in the first year? Remarkably, we're not given that much thought. So we just said £2 million.
Yeah.
And we turned over 2,192,000 in the first year.
And there's only 3 of you.
Yeah.
So you've obviously operated really efficiently to be able to do that with just 3 people.
Yes. So in terms of the skill sets, we have at the time we had a pretty good blend in as much as Andy has spent a lot of his career in business development and sales. Latterly at Area Squared, he was the business development director for regions. Yep. He had also had his own business, plus he'd also been head of sales for Morgan Lovell as well. So it was down to him to get the phone ringing and get some opportunities coming in. With my pre-construction background, that helped. Plus, we were very lucky in as much as, quite a lot of the companies in the supply chain that I'd worked with previously were comfortable working with us. And we never took that for granted, and I still don't to this day, and we work with some of them to this day as well. But the reality is that they only had our word for it that we weren't going to go bust. When we said, here's an opportunity, would you like to do this? So, and we did, the first few months we did, I won't name the client because we've recently done another project for them, but we did a project for a business, and it was a little £60,000 project, and I think it was the first or second appointment I actually went on, and got a design commitment in that meeting, and then we went from there, and we thought, well, this is easy. We'll just keep doing this going. And see where it goes. And so we did that, pulled that project together, and then we worked on a lot, and we didn't win anything else until the December of that year, but we were getting positive noises, and then all of a sudden we got 2 to 3 projects in the January, February of that year, and that really kick-started.
And how typical is that, by the way, that you how typical is that just of the industry that you're estimating, quoting so much, and then nothing comes in, and then all of a sudden you might get a little bit worried, like, where's the work coming from? Then all of a sudden the tide changes and it all comes in.
It seems to be. I mean, this is a common refrain from everybody in the industry now, that it takes so much longer for decisions to be made. I don't think it is just the norm now. I don't think there's any point complaining about it, but you have to...
What, because it takes so long for a decision to be made?
Well, decisions to be made, and around property strategies, around then what they then what clients then do, and we have half of our revenue is via the landlord and property investors, and again, there's all sorts of things that they need to do to make decisions, so we just need to accept it.
And the values of money people spend as well. It's hard to argue with the fact that they take so long to make decisions, because people are spending millions and millions of pounds. There's a filter of people that need to run it through. Everything needs to be right, or not everything's always right, but everything needs to nearly be right. There's so many people that need to please and keep happy. So if people are spending millions of pounds, you can't really moan that they take 6 to 12 months.
Who are we to rush them? Right? So and I think and it's people always wanting to build in some agility into what they're doing, I think is part of that. I think, but going back to where we were in 2016, running into 2017, it all started to come together. Bovis Homes project in Reading, Tax Calc project in Wokingham, and Jack's Pacific, 3 projects that were really, so big shout out to them, really.
What sort of value projects were you working on back then?
150 to 200,000. We used an external design resource, which we have a design team now. We still but we still work with external designers, and that won't change, because my way of thinking is very much it's very much, design is very subjective, and it's about making sure you have the right designer for the project. So I think a lot of our contemporaries try to go big on the fact that they have internal design. Well, we have internal design, but if I think an external designer is the most appropriate for the job, we'll use them. We take responsibility for that. It's still the design and build contracts and so forth. So I don't. And in 8 years of doing this, I've never once had anyone, and we're talking projects now up to the value of millions, not just £150,000. I've never had anybody say, we don't want to work with you because you haven't got your own in-house design. And it also, I saw one client with a designer of ours. It's actually a property company, and I started the meeting with, and this is our designer X. She's a freelance designer. I think she's the most appropriate for this project. So, but you can be the judge of that, Mr. Client.
Yeah.
And the guy turned around and said, "Well, you were in a pitch yesterday working for somebody else," and then she had to say, "Well, yeah, no, but that's because that's what they wanted me to say. But no, I don't. I have my own business,
and I'm freelance, so I can work.
So I can do what I like." And I think that the appeal back then was obviously not building, not having too much cost on the overhead in terms of design, but also the fact that we got experienced senior people that are running their own businesses, and so it worked.
Just a short break from the episode, which I really hope you guys are enjoying. This podcast has been invaluable for me, and I hope it's providing a lot of value for yourselves. If you could just do me one small favor and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Not only does it help me and the podcast, but it also helps share stories and insights from the industry that we find ourselves in. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. But also, if you're for instance, from your understanding, you're obviously running your company. If you're, having a conversation with a client, they're putting their trust in you to facilitate the project the best to your understanding. So if it is a freelance designer, that has to be utilized, and they're trusting you with the project, so they should really just let you run with it.
Yes.
In my opinion, anyway. I mean, sometimes I don't know what it is, but there's probably a preconception as to if they're freelance and not directly employed, sometimes they think that's a bit strange. Like, how come you're not utilizing the directly employed personnel? I don't know why sometimes clients feel more trustworthy if they're directly employed rather than freelance.
Neither do I, because the freelance designer arguably has more to lose if it goes wrong, and a greater degree of responsibility. And
also they need, they're obviously looking for additional work after that, so they're going to be putting their best foot forward because they see you as a source of work.
They have a business to run, so exactly. they look at life through the same lens that I do. So, but having said that, we've got fantastic designers here. Nikki Wright, Zoe Martinez, Kaylee Crew, and Debbie Leach. I mean, they're very different, and so we can cater for different people's requirements. But also, they're very talented. So, as well as a technical team of Ryan and Sam. So.
It all comes together, doesn't it? All works together. So obviously in year one, it sounds like you guys, go off to a flying start as such. How did you develop the team from year one going forward as well?
Well, in the first year, we had a contracts manager for a little while, and then brought in another one. I also brought in Emma Lawson, who's head of finance and accounts. So that was the key thing, really, because I was carrying invoices around in my briefcase and paying them when I thought I did quite well, actually. I think everyone got paid on time. Yeah. So that had to change. We spent the time when things were a little all right, while Andy was trying to get the phone to ring by opening up his black book, I was making sure that we had some processes in place, at least so when the work did arrive, that we had a way of doing it. So, and again, my experience at with the guys at Area Squared is invaluable to that, for that, you know, understanding, you know, little things that were taught to me that by some of the guys in the industry that you know, I took forward in terms of how you deal with the supply chain and how you manage the money and things. So, but you take the bits you want to, and then you think about how you do it yourself, and that's kind of how we've done it.
So obviously you've taken on the team. By then, seems like it's growing already. A couple of contracts managers and FD, by the sounds of it, head of finance. Sounds like that head of finance was probably the pivotal point, would you say? Because it might have freed up a bit of your time to be able to grow the business.
Yes, I think it was pivotal in as much as I could then gave me the headspace to do more. So we didn't. I mean, lots of people that have started businesses or done what I've done might sit here and say, yeah, I was working 15, 16-hour days for
which is
7 days a week, which, spoiler alert, but I wasn't. We weren't, you know, so, well, you know, you make decisions in life for a reason, and it wasn't, we didn't do what we did out of necessity. That is to say, you know, we had very good jobs at a very good company. So we could have stayed where we were for, albeit that's for them to say, really, you know. But it and so to then, you know, to lose quality of life because you're working so hard is and ultimately you've got to ask yourself what are you actually doing?
Yeah, and what's important to you, because they're over like the last 5 years where, you know, like social media has become a big thing, so everyone's exposed to how other people run the business, and you get certain people who are super successful who might portray this image that they are working 15 hours days, and it's making other people think that they're either lazy or they're not doing something correctly, so they're sort of like pressed into doing that as well, whereas it's actually extremely unsustainable. Do it for like a year and then you burn out.
Well, yeah, and
and also everyone wants to look like they're grafting. It's a better image for their company if, like, look at me, I'm working. What they think's a better image. Sorry, not I'm not saying it is a better image, but what they think's a better image. They're like, if I can put out that I'm working 20-hour days, or, you know, like 16, 17-hour days, 7 days a week, then I look better, our company looks better, I'm better as a leader.
Yes, LinkedIn's a great one for that. I wouldn't repeat what I think when I see a lot of those posts.
Sure.
Because, you know, so there's two in particular that obviously, you know, that I just find hilarious is about the sort of how hard they're working, and, you know, I'm running my own business and working 7 days a week and everything. Well, you're doing something wrong. You know, I wouldn't. You know, that's not. You know, you are fundamentally doing something wrong. Because the clients that you're working for don't want to be working with somebody that's working that hard, and then you got the other guys that have got their laptop out on a you know, overlooking the beach or something like that. And look at me, aren't I great at? You know, look at me, and the laptop's not even plugged in or anything. You know,
it's switched off still. You know, they've just got out for the photo.
You dilettantes. You know, but thankfully, you know, social media is just it's a representation of the extremes at both levels, isn't it? And the good thing is that the vast majority of people are somewhere in between, and that's where I regard myself. So, no, I won't be posting that I went wild water swimming at 4 o'clock this morning, and then did 3 hours of meditation and so forth. But you never know, watch this space.
Thing is, LinkedIn's become a dangerous space nowadays, because it's gone from, you know, primarily I would say like 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't really use it 4 or 5 years ago. I had an account but I didn't use it, and it wasn't very well utilized, or people didn't utilize it that much. But nowadays it's almost become a social media for business. So you get the merge of your traditional business posts, which are really informative, some of them, and great. People want to, you know, expose their companies, but like you said, you get the other side of it as well, where people are actually using it as a social media and a show off to tool
to
show what they're doing.
Well, you can just they can, and you just choose to ignore them or laugh at them, or if it becomes a regular thing, then you just block people,
unfriend them, I know,
or just say just unfollow them.
The names will remain nameless, but I do know a couple of people in the industry who write what they think on those posts. And I follow them to read those as well, because I find them quite funny, because they're writing what I'm thinking, but I'm like, I don't really want to write it, because I don't want to ever burn any bridges.
There's definitely people I follow that I don't agree with anything they're saying. I think it's utter nonsense, but I just find it amusing.
I know it's true, but that's the bad side of LinkedIn as such, the showy side. But let's jump back onto Curve.
Yeah, so where we were, so we sort of finished year one, and we hit our target, and the next couple of years we added more people, and the turnover went to 6 and then went to 9.
And what sort of period of time is that, from 6 to 9?
3 years.
3 years.
So, 6 to 9 is 1 year. So
that's a massive jump for it.
So from 2016 to 2019 is to 9 million. So and in that time we won some local awards, or Thames Valley Property Newcomer Award, and we won a Growth Award and things, which helped. We then got, and that actually helped with sort of getting some national exposure. Not that we were looking for it. I took a call from a guy at the Sunday Times one Friday, and the number of people that you get, unsolicited calls and contact from because you've got the title you've got is extraordinary. But I thought Sunday Times.
It's a big one.
I'm easily flattered, so so I filled out a form, and then they heard nothing from them until they then called up and said, "Well, we'd like to just do a bit of a 5-minute interview, just so that just in case you might register somewhere on the fast track list." Well, lo and behold, we got an email one Friday saying we came third. So I think that's the biggest single. Well, albeit it's a long time ago now, or that's still very, very special.
Yeah, it's a great achievement, especially because you and various others have grown the company, so to be able to be nationally recognised is a great achievement.
Yes, and so that's why I still don't stop talking about it. But
can tell. You couldn't wait to get that one in.
It's just, I think it worked us out at something like 186% growth, and I know it's ultimately it's a Sunday supplement that gets thrown into the recycling by everyone the following week.
Not by you though. You claim you keep that.
Laminated over there. Exactly. So that was good, but do you mind going into the growth from 6 to 9 in a year? I'm quite fascinated about. Is there what's behind that? Because that's a hell of a jump. That's 33% jump in 1 year. 50% jump, I should say. Sorry, in 1 year. What is there anything behind that? How did you navigate that? Working hard, adding the right people to the business, because we're nothing without them, and some of the things that we'll have worked on in year 1 and 2 then came to fruition in year 3. So it's it's hard work, but and getting the right people and getting the right people in the right time as well. And that's how it. And
then was it bigger projects that you guys took on to be able to get that?
Yeah. The growth in the project size has been steady throughout. So we'd still say that our minimum size is around 150,000, but now it's, in terms of what we're working on, it's several £1 million projects that we have at any one time. So we had some key guys arrive at that point in year 2 as well. Paul Scott in business development. So again, that helped. That freed up Andy to do some sales and business development. So,
why do you think that it's on topic but off topic? Why do you think? Because I see it all the time. people who work in business development, they seem to hop around everywhere. Like someone's always in a new role in business development, then they're at someone else and someone else. Like, why do you think they seem to get around as such more than any other?
Because the perception is, and some do, they have a marketable asset, and that those are their contacts. They think of them as their contacts, and there is an element of truth in that. If they've got strong enough relationships to be able to say, I was telling you that business X was wonderful last week, but now I'm telling you business Y is wonderful this week, then and they can get away with it, then that's good. I mean, so that's why they do. They're also the lifeblood of the industry, because without the opportunities, we have nothing to sell or build. Yeah. So, and people are always looking for an edge,
looking for a deal. Yeah,
and I think so. I would say that so people are moving around for a variety of reasons, but perhaps it's because they've been offered more money. It's as simple as that.
And you are right, they are a profitable asset at the end of the day, because if they are bringing the work in, they're paying for themselves and some as well. So
yes, and I think that's how other employers see it. They know their own. They like to think they know their own worth. But let's not forget that the ones moving around, 50% of them will be because they weren't as good as they told people that they were at their interview, and they move on. So, when you see a lot of them moving around, it's not always just down to them all being great and getting pay rises.
That's not as good as what they say they are. To put it bluntly.
But that's the same with everyone. There can be people are both the greatest thing of any business, as well as the sometimes the most frustrating, because they, particularly in terms of the interview process. Can you really get to know each other during the course of an interview process?
No, I don't think you can, personally.
And so you're always, regardless of role, you're always going to have people that change within a 6-month, 2-year period post going somewhere, because it doesn't work for them, let alone, and it doesn't work for the employer. So I think it's, we are, compared to most, we're a small industry. So the guys here have a limited pool in which to go and do the same job somewhere else. There's a limited pool to go to, and so that does two things. One is it means that it has a bearing on their cost, of course, but also they don't necessarily have that flexibility. Whereas you take a profession whereby you have several in every business, like an accountancy function of some description, they're more professionally mobile in that sense. But I think I've waffled on into a completely different subject there. But
that's the point of a podcast. So let us know obviously how Curve continued to grow as such, because I think you also diversified down a different route as well. Is it lighting or something like?
Yeah, so we grew we grew Curve as a team. We then brought in, we then separated the furniture business out, which is Furniture Forum, and we brought someone came in to run that, The logic being is that while we don't pretend that they're not related, because they are. Curve owns Forum. It's less confusing for when you're working on furniture only opportunities, and so the idea was to grow the furniture business as a standalone business in its own right, while still doing while still selling furniture through Curve, as it were, on the design and build opportunities. So that's grown slowly but steadily, and has been part of the success story. So Mark Besant runs that now, obviously going back to what he knows what he knows the furniture world, and then the lighting business is something with again somebody else I've known for a long time, Andrew Boydell, who I worked with 20 odd years ago, on the other side of the table from each other. He worked for a design and build company in Manchester, and I was at Cushman & Wakefield, and again we'd stayed in contact for a long time. His career had pivoted into lighting, and he spent a long time in the Middle East, both running his own company as well as moving into lighting. And so he and I started talking about 3-4 years ago, came up with the idea of doing, but the chat of doing something with us didn't last very long at the time. But then we stayed in touch, because we do anyway, because we were friends and are friends, and so 2 years ago we started that. So Forum Lighting is really in the sort of first year of trading now. And that is, I mean, Andrew's been a great addition to the business, full stop, because he's been involved across all areas of office fit out and refurbishment, and so
probably worth his weight in gold then.
Yes. Yeah. So as much as we were getting a lighting business, we were also getting Andrew, which was part of the plan. So the idea was never for it to be a subcontractor to Curve. We can't. While we're a relatively successful but modestly sized design and build company, we wouldn't sell enough lights to justify having our own company for it. So again, it has all its own client base. It has a software. It also has a trademark piece of software as well, which is rolling out with some significant clients. And that's really interesting, just to be part of that and be part of the journey with the lighting business. And of course, it's also helping us with prospective pitches. So it's about doing things a little bit differently, and the lighting is a testament to that. It has the same branding as the furniture business, because they swim in similar ponds in terms of the architectural and design community. But
you mentioned doing things differently there, which is an interesting topic, because at the end of the day, everyone who works in design and build is essentially doing the same thing, really. So how can
that's a bit controversial. I thought we were reinventing the wheel.
In fact, that I remember that phrase you saying on our pre-call about reinventing the wheel, because you touched on it. That's something I wanted to talk about, because at the end of the day, it's all the same. Do you know what I mean? It's all the same, really. Different from aesthetic perspective, and different locations and different ways of facilitating it, but it's all the same in a nutshell. So how do you do things differently? Not just Curve, but just as an industry as such. How do you differentiate yourselves?
Well, I think there's one or two questions in there.
Pick whichever one you want first.
That I spotted. So I'll try and do them as best I can. So firstly, in terms of reinventing the wheel, the office design and build process has been very similar for a long time. Now, we're in a very competitive industry, and so you've always got to think of peripheral things to make the sale of what it is you're doing compelling to the people that are listening to you. And also, let's not forget the most important people in this, which are the clients. And while I might think the way a stud petition is put up is the same as it has been for the last 20, 30 years, the clients don't know, because they only need us. They need us every time, every 5-10 years, whenever they move, or so there's little. In my view, there's little point in a design and build company ever being a household name, because why would you need to be that? Because people don't know they need us until they need us.
Yeah,
so
true. So is that like a point around proposals to the client as well can be different when you're proposing or pitching a project?
It's as with everything. You've got to put yourself in their position and understand what's important to them, what's keeping them awake at night, which is something I remembered even back at Cushman & Wakefield doing large corporate pitches, selling real estate services. It was, I remember it was, one of my colleagues then said, what's keeping them awake at night? And I've never forgotten that, really. So that's the key. You've got to understand that depending on whether it's, and a lot of the work that we deal with involves a professional team as well, either reintroduced during the course of the process or if it's a landlord project, you're dealing with an educated client. But so, and you've got to tailor what you're doing for them accordingly. The outcome may be the same, but you want them to make sure that they understand that you understood what they need.
Yeah.
So, the property industry has changed significantly in the last 10 years, so that changes how we look at things and do things. But in terms of our interactions with landlords and investors are different now than they would be 10 years ago, where perhaps they didn't like to go design and build as a procurement route. I think the speed to market on property is such that they want to go design and build, but that's a topic in and of itself. So how do we do things differently is in our actions, and it's starting a lighting business, developing some software that goes with the lighting business, and understanding that can be of an assistance to the Curve clients as well as others. So recruiting people from outside of the industry, we do a lot of that. We while it's great to have people, and we have a number of people that I've worked with before, as you can imagine. Yeah. But if equally, we've got people that have wanted to pivot in their career, and we've helped them do that. So because they bring something different.
Yeah.
Because if you're always inward looking, and just telling yourself, well, we know what's best, so the standard route of, I need a pre-construction manager, so ring a recruitment consultant, get him to call all the other D&B company pre-construction guys and offer them X, and just do the same thing you've done before. You'll get what you've always had, won't you?
Yeah.
So we try to do things differently in terms of how we run the business.
Sure.
As much as anything else. How that manifests itself with whether we put walls up a bit any differently remains to be seen. But you want people to buy the business and the people.
Yeah, it's the relationship side of things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because obviously, by the sounds of it, your career is, stemmed, what I'd say, correct me if I'm wrong, primarily on relationships that you formed previously and managed to nurture all the way through to up to date.
Yes, not in, I wouldn't say intentionally. I wouldn't say I've collected people in that sense, intentionally or otherwise. But I think one thing I learned when I was working with Aki Stamatis at when I was doing the business development thing Forefront is that I rang people that I hadn't spoken to in years, and which, for relatively introverted guy with a dull northern monotone, I didn't think that was really going to fly. But in the same way I remember people I worked with 20 years ago, people also remembered me, and so people take the call, and it's one thing I'm not, I could never be I have every respect for the telemarketing side of our marketing side of our industry, but because it's not a skill set I particularly have. But but if you've tried to do the right thing along the way, people will typically take the call. So
and that one phone call you never know what that could lead to, because you, by the sounds of it, like I said earlier, you're obviously genuinely checking in with those people, just seeing how they are, and you never know what the root of that phone call could cause, and there's infinite possibilities off the back of one phone call.
Well, whoever you're calling we're well within the rights to put the phone down.
Yeah.
They're well within the rights to say I don't remember you. So, that call can end at any time, can't it? But if you don't ask, you don't get. People love being asked for help. It makes them feel good about themselves, and providing you didn't fall out with them along the way, then they'll welcome the call. It's not all about sort of the dark arts of telemarketing and things. It's about relationships. Yeah,
just being a people's person, really, and just generally being authentic with relationships and people that you form relationships with.
Yeah.
I feel like you might be well positioned to answer this question, but where?
Well, shoot.
You've worked in the industry for a long time, so you've seen how it's transitioned from 20 odd years ago up to now. How do you think it has changed for the good and the bad up to now?
If I deal with the good, I think design it started maturing a long time ago, and this is just my personal opinion, by the way. The design and build industry has matured a lot and professionalised itself, I would say, if that's even a word. And so, in that sense, that's a good thing. The industry has evolved to meet the needs of clients, fundamentally. So whether it's design and build or traditionally procured, we are, and we have to react to what the market wants. Mm-hmm. We can drive the market to a certain degree in terms of design ideas, and the fit out industry, or the design industry and the fit out industry as a whole is, furniture manufacturers spend a fortune on R&D and things like that, and it's worthwhile because it is progressing in terms of different types of offices that people want and need. So the design and build market is, I would say, maturing and professionalised in the last 20 years. The overall fit-out market and the overall design has evolved to meet client need, but also evolved to look at things differently. And so fundamentally it comes down to what it is the people on the ground want. So how they are being treated by their employers, how important the office is to their employees rather. And I think that's where there's been a massive shift.
Do you think predominantly since COVID, or do you think that's been spanned over a long period of time?
It was, I could do half an hour on that anyway. It was already evolving, if we're being, but make no mistake about it, it really accelerated during the course of, during the last 5 years. So taking a step back on COVID, I think I didn't subscribe to, and it's all well and good. It's all well and good saying this now with what appears like a huge amount of hindsight, but I never subscribed to the death of the office theories that people were talking about. And
people went mad about that, didn't they?
Yeah, and that, if you kill off offices, you kill off cities, you kill off. And also we're social creatures.
Yeah, that's true.
But and also I believe businesses work better when they're together.
Collaborative, definitely, without doubt.
So I think where we're heading towards is the best of both worlds in terms of how offices are occupied. What it means to us as an industry is, actually, if you want to be really selfish about it, you'd say whenever there's change, there's opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Stagnation is where
it's dangerous.
is where it has a problem, and people have issues that need to be fixed. So we're there to help that. You've also you've got a perfect storm in the sense that you've got legislative environmental requirements coming down the track.
Yep.
You've also got what I see as being a two-tier property market, whereby you've got modern buildings with very good environmental credentials being in high demand. Secondary and tertiary buildings less so, and I guess the scary part of that is that those buildings require a significant amount of investment, and that money has to come from somewhere. So, but there is always opportunities there for office fit out company and refurbishment companies. But in terms of just going back to the COVID point, I think the good thing about that was it stress tested the infrastructure and the technology to mean that we could work from home if needed.
Yep.
I mean, I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I didn't even realise I had Teams on Microsoft 365. I didn't know what it was, frankly. Friends of mine were talking about their businesses using Teams prior to COVID, and I think, but it only goes so far, because a lot of things need the human connection.
Need to be in person with a lot of people, I think, as well, especially with our industry. It requires collaborative and in-person collaboration as well, rather than Teams, because you lose the human connection and the emotion as well behind a conversation, which I think is really important for any industry, to be honest with you. But obviously I can only speak from our industry. It's important for that in-person collaboration and in-person connection to collaborate on a project as well.
Yes, and I think during lockdown periods, I think our people here, I think their diaries were just full of 1-hour meetings that were arranged for a 30-second question that they would now ask just bumping into each other. And I think it's difficult for remote workers to really understand how the business ticks. They do eventually, but it's always a little bit difficult. It's a slower process. So, I mean, you would say that, I should be a big proponent of offices and things like that, given what I do. Not necessarily. In terms of making Curve more successful, it's not about that. All I can speak to is my own experience as a business owner, and the fact that we do offices for a living. Obviously it helps that people are in offices, but so whoever I'm talking to, I always caveat that conversation with, well, you would expect me to say this, but everyone needs loads of offices. No, what we need to do is we need to do the right job for the right people at the right time. So we're not, and there's a lot of media hype around people closing offices and things, and then you dig a bit deeper and you realise actually they had a lease expiry, so they're just taking a slightly smaller office somewhere else. It's like, well, you're just making a headline, aren't you?
It's easy for them to do that. Plus, it's clickbait. They want to make headlines. They need people to click on it and read it, and then create this, this facade or this image around the office that no one wants to go back to the office, or hardly anyone wants to go back to the office. It's just clickbait.
Well, we had, and some people don't believe me on this, but once the in terms of what we do here as a business, not ignoring what it is that we do for a living, we simply said, can you, the office is now open for you to return to if you're comfortable to do so. And the guys out there deserve the credit for this, not me or Andy or anybody, but they've been here every day since, and that's however many years later.
So they actually chose to come back, all of your employees? Yeah, which predominantly people probably would have done, I'd imagine.
If they were here, they would probably say, yeah, but we know you wanted them to, but that, but no one's insisted on that. But we're in a quite a large part of the business is out a lot anyway. I mean, so you do have people on the move a lot, but also you have people that are office based 5 days a week. And I think it's only fair on the people that are here 5 days a week that the rest of us actually pitch up and at least
show your faces.
and on a personal level, I just homes for being at home. It's not for working. So
I don't see how people can differentiate the two of them whilst working from home. Well, I wasn't able to, and I can only speak from my experience. So even if I try and do work from home, I find I can't get focused into working from home. There's always a distraction because you're at home, and your psychology ism at home as well, regardless whether what people say. You're at home, so your whole psychology is being at home and the home comforts of being there, so it's hard to get into work for me anyway.
I think if I worked now, every job's different, obviously, and everything the workplace, wherever that might be, office, home, pub. It has to be task orientated. So it's got to be whatever's best for you. So and the job that you're doing. So with all of that said, I just know that frankly, I want home to be home. I don't want to be walking past a laptop at 8 o'clock at night with it still pinging away. You get everything on your phone anyway, and if you choose to do something with it, that's up to you. But that should be somewhere to relax. And I like coming to the office every day.
Yeah, you're the same as me.
It gives me a sense of purpose.
How about you've touched on the good and a little bit about the bad industry, but where do you think it's getting to in the next 10, 20 years? What sort of changes do you think are going to be made, and where do you think we're going to be situated in 20 years' time?
Well, if I deal with the sort of property market, I've already referred to how we need to make buildings more efficient, and we need to take responsibility. The construction industry needs to take responsibility for carbon emissions, because it is one of the largest emitter globally, and there are already things in place to make sure that planning requirements for new buildings are such that things like that are in place. I think we will see more reuse. I'm a great believer in the circular economy. If I went to pitch a job today with a client, and told them I thought I was really clever because our designer had spec recycled carpet or something like that, then the industry has been pivoting towards recycle and reuse for the last 10 years. So that's nothing new. What we do, or we are starting to do, and what we like to do is we can tell you what we've specified now, but we can also tell you of all the things we've specified what can then be reused in 5 years' time. Because the carbon, the bulk of the carbon emissions are in the manufacturer, right? So if you and that is what's got to come down. But again, the manufacturers are aware of this, and so they've begun the process of repurposing facilities to be able to refurbish and modify for reuse rather than making brand new. So that's one area that will need to grow in terms of adopting a more circular approach to construction. The second thing is around, and again, a lot of these things are environmentally based, but also in terms of the office market, how that looks. Now we've seen a growth in what's referred to as Cat A+, so fit outs by landlords, giving tenants flexibility. They don't have to make the investment of a fit out day one, and that works for a particular type of occupier. And I don't see, while I thought that would slow down at some point, I don't see it abating. Certainly with some of our institutional investment clients in central London, the space that we're fitting out is often let before we finished it, as opposed to how it had just been left. So there's that. The Cat A debate will rumble on inevitably, with the two main protagonists, property agents and landlords, trying to work out what is best. Do you really need to fit it out from a shell to a Cat A just for somebody able to fit it out? Because again, there is a financial impact on that, but also an environmental one. So that's something that will play out. I think that in the next 10 years, in terms of how we do things as a design and build industry, there will obviously be greater and greater adoption of AI in terms of how we present design, how we work with design, and that doesn't mean that there will need to be less designers. It's just designers will start to adopt the use of AI in what they're doing, and that will speed up the process. So ultimately, help people do more in less time. So, in terms of so I've mentioned a bit about obviously the circular piece. So that's in terms of how we build it.
I think you're right about the AI as well. I definitely think it's going to be more integrated, because our industry, I feel, is behind, but just the construction industry as a whole, I feel like is a step behind a lot of other industries in terms of the integration of AI, or just the integration of technology, to be honest with you, because it's a physical product that goes in. You can't, one day maybe, but you can't replace somebody physically fixing the product.
Exactly. I saw something again on LinkedIn a while ago, about a year ago now. I think it was some guy posted the fact that a construction site in London, and someone had put on the hoarding deliberately, and it was quite clever. Just like to see AI do this, because obviously they were redeveloping the building, and that's absolutely right. But the tools that AI provide will help us do it better. I would hope there will be teething trouble with that. And I think that there's an architect friend of mine that we do some work with, and he's very much adopting an AI approach. And just speaking to him, he said that prior to you and I starting this conversation, 6 months ago, the ability of what we're doing is grown tenfold.
Yeah.
So it's just the pace of change.
Yeah, it will happen. It's inevitable to be integrated into our industry. It's just a bit of a slower integration because it's a bigger change for the construction industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Looking at it from a holistic perspective, it's a bigger change for us rather than other industries that were more digitally focused from day one, but just like 5-10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with BIM, isn't it? You know, it's in theory and in practice, it's a fantastic idea to be able to have a model of a building with all the information on it in a 3D. But because we're always dealing with existing buildings, you're reliant on that being, and then fundamentally it comes down to cost. So. If I was to say to a client, well, yeah, we'll refurbish the building for you, but do you want? I can get it all modelled in, in BIM. Would they pay the cost?
Nah, it's more of a luxury for them, isn't it, rather than necessity?
Yeah, but that technology is there, and hopefully will be used more and more.
Without doubt. What about Curve? What's the future plans for Curve? You know, we've touched on the future of the industry, but what about for you guys specifically?
We need to just concentrate on doing the right thing in the day, and so I'm a sort of great believer in that. I don't, we obviously have internal meetings here presenting the plan and the vision and all of that sort of stuff to people, but I would never stand up in front of them and say, right, we're going to do X tens of millions in so many years, or we're going to, we'll have a target, but it would be one that's achievable, doable with the current level of overhead, and sustainable. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do every year. We have a growth plan, but that's across all three businesses and not just Curve. We see growth geographically as opposed to just saying, right, let's double the turnover from here now, and hire a load of people and expect it to happen.
It's unsustainable as well. That.
Well, it doesn't work that way. It's
kind of more like natural progression, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a well-worn. It's a well-used frame from that cheesy film, isn't it? Build it and they will come. But you can't. Don't. That doesn't mean just hiring loads of people and then make it happen. So you need to do. You need to do strategic sort of recruitment in certain areas and see where you need the areas of growth. So, So I've not answered your question, have I? Where do I see us? No,
you kind of have.
Well, where do I see us? Yes, I would see us growing rather than contracting.
Sure.
We have an overhead to sustain a greater turnover than where we are now. So we have the right people in place. We have a fantastic team of people. They're all different and quirky in their own right, as I am. And
but you need different people in a company, don't you? You don't want everyone the same.
But they're all doing their best. Fundamentally, they want to do their best for themselves first and foremost, but they also want to do the best for the company. And
sure.
They've a lot of stay. We did a post last week, and I think half the people have been here. Nearly half the people have been here 5 years. Well, we've only been going 8, and that's with adding people on as we've gone. So I won't. It would be easy for me to just come up with a number.
Yeah.
But in terms of my own personal aspirations, I'm a great believer in the business staying of a size where I'm involved day to day. in terms of what we do, and I do not see it will. Yeah, I don't see having levels and levels of management and growth in that sense, and so I don't know how you expected me to answer that question.
No, it's
I think a lot of,
subjective to the person.
I think a lot of people would go, well, we've just finished our sales year for this year, and so Curve, in sales figures, did 20 million this year, which is pretty much bang on target. We hit that 6 weeks before.
Yep.
We're actually moving our financial year to April next year. The reason being is that we found 1st of October was seasonally difficult to have a beginning and an end.
Yep.
So we've decided to extend it, so that won't to next year. But in terms of sales, we've just completed the year, as it were. I'm doing speech marks there. At 20 million. The furniture business in the region of 4, and the lighting business will probably do 3 this year. So
massively successful across the board then.
So that's good, and so grow that to 30, 40. It's there's a lot of things that have got to come together.
Sure. But it sounds like you've got some big plans, and it also sounds like you've done very well, because by the sounds of it, Curve hasn't really been around for a long time. 8 years, did you say?
8 years in September.
So be able to grow from 0 to 20, just turnover speaking, and then obviously the other couple of companies that add their part as well. You've done amazingly well for yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I mean, it's been a team effort. It's
But you still need a leader behind the team to push it. So although you people will give credit to the team, as fundamentally it's the leader that's led the team to take them to whatever. To give yourself a bit of credit.
No comment. Just
Fair enough.
Just keep talking. And we've had some ups and downs. We've made mistakes. Sure. I think it's fair to say, and I think it's whether it's on a daily basis. The thing I try to instill into everybody on a daily basis, and it's Andy actually who used this phrase first, but it's okay to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Just make that. But I think but you've got to acknowledge those. I think I don't have a great deal of time for playing the victim or whataboutery and anything else. We're in a very we're in a service industry. While we build things, we're a service industry, and as well-intentioned as a contract manager might be, or a pre-contract manager, or whomever, project director might be, their best efforts may not have been good enough.
Yeah. And that's still alright, isn't it? At the end of the day,
and that's okay.
Yeah.
But if the client isn't happy, I'd rather let's move on from the injustice of the client not feeling happy.
Yeah.
Let's work out what it is that we missed that meant that they weren't, and then go from there and learn from that, rather than they didn't say they wanted that, or stop talking. No one's getting fired because of this, is what I try and say.
Yeah.
And
let's just try and learn from the mistake rather than dwell on it as such.
Because there's just a lot of time wasting, and I think the size of our business lends itself to that sort of open dialogue, in as much as when you start introducing a level of management, middle management, if you like, you've got middle managers managing up the line, as well as down the line, and that. I don't think that's always healthy. You need it of a certain size, of course you do. But I'm
it can
saying
create some friction within a team, I suppose.
We're fortunate at our size now that hopefully we can all work through things together.
Yeah.
And the old cliches like win together, lose together, and all of those
cliches
things.
For a reason. But it sounds like you've built a great team, and you've done a great job.
Yeah.
Thanks so much
for your time. Work in progress is all I'd say.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure you've got a long way to go, you guys. Thanks so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure.
It's been an invaluable conversation to hear your perspective of things coming from, like a property and like project management as such background.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to hear your perspective. You've done a fantastic job growing the 3 companies, I should say now, and wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Michael.